The stars are out, but there's something strange. Lights in the sky, shifting out of range. A flash of green, a hum so near. Are they coming? Should we fear? What goes bump in the night? Oh, what a sight! Aliens above, taking flight. Are they friends or foes? Who's to say? Will they come on, just drift away?
I wake up every morning when I go on the clock.
They're watching us from up so high, silent and hidden against the sky. Do they seek us or just explore? Maybe they're knocking on Earth's back door. We'll keep our eyes open, watch the sky glow. Listen close for secrets they know. Will they take us up or leave us down below? Answers unknown, but we're ready to go. What goes bump in the night? Oh, what a sight! Aliens above, taking flight. Are they friends or foes? Who's to say? Will they come on, just drift away? What goes bump in the night? Oh, what a sight! Aliens above, taking flight. Are they friends or foes? Who's to say? Will they come on, just drift away?
Oh, Riley, you're still muted. I got you, buddy.
I got it. Don't worry. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to What Goes Bump Tonight. My name is Riley Clark, and alongside me, as always, is
Trevor Jensen.
and today our special guests, Leslie and Stephen Shaw.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Live long and prosper.
Indeed.
Peace and prosperity to you.
I love it.
Well, we are absolutely gracious to have you guys as our guests tonight. Shout out
Very
to
much.
everyone joining us in the chat right now. Those dweebs, Butters. There's other people there that haven't said anything yet. What's going on, everybody?
Leopold
Leslie.
Scotch?
Leslie and
Yeah.
Stephen. So
That's
we need to learn a little bit about y'all. Where are you from and what got you guys into aliens?
well, we're Southern California natives, born and raised. We live in the desert outside of
Currently
Palm Spring, east of Los Angeles.
in Desert Hot Springs.
Yeah, and we live along the 33rd parallel, which is a hot spot, kind of like the UFO parallel. And
Yeah.
that's no lie. That we've seen a fair amount of activity.
As we've come to find out. Yes.
Mhm.
So yes, so anyways, we met. I was an acupuncturist at the time in the 90s, and
Tai Chi
Leslie
teacher.
and a Tai Chi teacher, and Leslie ended up becoming a student of
Oh.
mine, and we met that way. So we didn't meet at any like a UFO convention or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was via different circumstances. So, but anyways, my first experiences started when I was 3 years of age in Woodland Hills, California, in 1963.
Mhm.
I was told by my parents, who basically they grew up in wartime England as children, World War II in northern England, and I was told, as a child, that we had this family spirit guide whose name was Oglegli, and
Ooh.
that was Oglegli was this protector that would show up at times for different people in the family, and had been doing this for a long period of time. So, anyways, at the age of 3 were my first experiences when I would be visited from time to time by a 2-footed entity that would jump on my chest and my stomach in the middle of the night, kind of playfully.
But it was invisible.
Invisible, wasn't too heavy, but it was invisible. Certainly wasn't a cat or a dog,
Yeah.
because I could tell the difference, and also my eyes
Definitely.
were open.
Yep.
So anyway, so that was my first experience. My next experience happened about the age of 8, when I was awakened in the middle of the night I was sleeping in a bunk bed at that time, on the top of a bunk bed, and I happened to roll over again. It's always in the middle of the night, okay?
Right.
Whether it's midnight or 2, whatever, the witching hour. So I rolled over, and I looked out my bedroom door, and there were these, what I call garden gnomes. They were about 1.5 feet tall. there were 4 or 5 of them, and they were walking into my bedroom. And they were shimmery. They were kind of shimmery, and I was looking at them, trying to clear my eyes, saying, "Am I just imagining this?"
Right, yeah.
This was 60. This is 68. So we did not have a TV set in our bedroom. Okay,
Yep.
this was we did not have a TV set. So I rolled over and just tried to forget them. Right.
Right,
So
yeah.
then
As one does.
I at the age of 11 I saw my first UFO.
Don't forget walking down the hall,
Oh,
though.
yeah, okay, all right,
That one
right.
is
When I
really
was
scary to
9, yeah, of
me.
course. When I was 9, I was again in the bunk bed, and I heard the sound coming from the living room that I did not recognize. I knew it wasn't the dog. It just, I knew what the dog sound was. So I
Mhm.
said, what? I just got up to investigate, and I was walking down the hallway, and my heart was pounding, and I was literally kind of scared. No, actually kind of fearful. My pulse was racing, and I just heard this really weird sound. I did not know what it was, and as I got to the end of the hallway to turn into the living room to the right, I just blacked out.
Oh,
Then
no.
a few hours later, I ended up back in my bunk bed.
Tucked in nicely.
Yeah,
Now,
what?
yeah, I was back in my bed. Okay, obviously I don't know how I got there.
And his
Right.
little brother, Philip, Philip, he slept in his closet for 2 years during his childhood. And
When he turned 8 years old, yes.
when Stephen asked him about it, he said, "Well, I'm afraid of the little men that come at night."
That's
And
terrifying.
and Stephen,
Mm-hmm,
was thinking, "Yeah, I saw those gnomes too."
Like, hold the
The only,
phone.
the only reason that I believed him was because I had seen them myself,
Right.
Right.
but I had only seen them once. And so when I hit the age of 11 in 1971, I saw what I call my first UFO, and this was just, I don't know what, by design or by happenstance. I was 9:30 at night, and I was going by the front door that had window panes,
Yep,
and
definitely.
I saw this bright orange large globe that was floating from south to north, going horizontally at a very kind of slowish pace.
Yep,
So
like
first I'm
leisurely.
yeah, first I'm thinking like it's a helicopter or something like that.
Yep.
Then it kind of stopped, and then it kept on going, and I was watching it, and it didn't have any running lights, and it wasn't acting like a helicopter. Plus, it was the wrong shape.
And
It
silent.
made no sound. So
And
the next
silent.
day
Yep.
is silent. So won the criterium of like the 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
anyway, so the next night I called Griffith Park Observatory asking them if they had seen anything, but they said, young man, uh, to the effect of that, our telescopes are not pointed in the direction of Woodland Hills. So,
They gave him the brush,
but there, but
Yeah,
there was, but there was, and during that time period in the 70s and the 80s, there were a lot of sightings in the area. There was a famous one at a drive-in theater in Tarzana
Mhm.
that many people witnessed sometime in the 70s too. So it was not something that was uncommon,
right.
but it's just like I happened to see that was my first one.
And then
That's
we found that
cool.
the weird abduction phenomena tended to happen in clusters.
Yes,
Like Philip had a cluster of 3.
my
Um,
younger brother. Yes.
Mhm.
he awoke in the middle of the night to these 2 white lights shining in his bedroom window, and his bedroom had this like drop off of, you know, 25 feet down to a creek, and so these objects would have had to have been floating up in the air like
Well,
30 feet,
yeah, for
Right.
continuity, this is at a different house. This is the house up in Sonora,
They were building it,
California,
yeah.
up in the lower Sierras that we were actually physically building because we were builders. Okay, so my brother was 16 in 1982. So Leslie, you can continue.
So he was there, and there were nothing in the back that it could have been these lights. There's no
Right.
roads back there. It was a hillside with trees. That was it, right?
Right.
So that he was staring at it for a minute, trying to put it together in his head what they could be, and then suddenly he blacks out. And then and then wakes up again hours later in bed. And then the next night he was laying in bed and he heard a scrabbling sound and he assumed it was his cat. So he reached down to pet the cat, and
Oh,
instead
no.
a hand grabs his wrist, a cold hand, he said, and he felt this thrill of terror and adrenaline.
Yeah.
where you would normally not be able to go right back to sleep, but then he instantly
And
blacked
this
out
was
again.
this was the
you know?
6'3" tall man at the age of
Yeah, usually afraid of
yeah.
nothing, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
he wasn't
Incredibly
he was
scary.
not a they called him Giant Pickle when he was young. So.
And
That's good.
and then the third night, this was so important to the family because this is when we realized what we were dealing with finally.
Yeah.
He awoke and looked into his bedroom doorway, and there was a tall gray alien standing there. You know, the 6 foot tall ones,
6'1.5",
skinny, gray, big black eyes, the usual description.
Yep.
And then he blacks out again. And we found that during the abductions, they have this power of changing your memories to a certain extent, especially when it comes to the face of their abductors. Like people will have bits and pieces remembering of their abduction, but when it comes to the face of their abductors, they remember something
Well,
different, like an owl or gnomes in this case. You know,
well,
we think.
my uncle had a different story. I mean, my uncle actually saw the same entity in 1948. It must have been 1948 because it was just after the war. He was an RAF pilot, and
In England,
in
yeah.
England, but he
Yeah.
was stationed in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka.
Yep.
And so he relayed the story to me when I was a young man in my early teens, a couple different times. And he was not a guy for flights of fancy. He was a very no nonsense guy.
Yep.
Growing up
Straight
in
shooter.
England, straight shooter. British.
Yep.
Kind of stuff. So, anyways, he told me about how he was sleeping in this, multi-man tent on a cot with a bunch of the other,
Soldiers
pilots.
and pilots, yeah.
About a 40-man tent, which I used to sleep in too when I was in the military as a CB. So
Yep.
I understood what he was talking about, and he was awakened in the middle of the night by this tall, skinny, 6.5 foot tall figure that was wearing a red hat that said Douglas. Happened to just know his name. Said, Douglas, you have to get out of your cot right now and get out because you may get killed. And so he'd heard the stories about O'Glegley, our family spirit guide. So he just said, okay. He's like in his early 20s, right? So he just
Yeah.
got out of the tent, and about a minute and a half later, roughly, a raiding party came through with machetes and with some guns and killed several of the officers. And he relayed the story to me, dead serious, when I was with my dad and with my
Wow.
aunt at the time. And guess what? When he bought his daughter her first car, which was a white Triumph, which is a
Yep.
famous British sports car.
Mm.
Guess what the license plate was?
Douglas.
O'Glegley.
Ugly.
Like thanking him for saving him,
Yeah.
I think.
The family spirit guide, the one that that he said,
Yeah.
the one that
That's
actually,
really, really peculiar. Like
Yeah.
what?
When did the stories of the spirit guide start?
Like
oh,
4 generations ago at least that we know
Yeah.
of.
Wow.
it goes back
Yeah.
to Germany and then to England, and this entity always appears the same way, but in different colors sometimes.
He's skinny and tall, always.
Always about 6.5 feet tall, skinny. To my uncle, it was a black figure with red fez. To me, it was a blue-white entity, again,
Yeah,
but
tell you
without a hat.
about that.
To my brother, it was a tall gray,
Yeah.
again, but always the same form. Okay.
Yeah.
That's when we realized what was going on with the family because we couldn't figure out, was it a haunting? Were they
Yeah,
all
like what are
possessed?
we
What is
really
it?
dealing
Yeah.
with?
But
Right,
now
exactly.
once Philip reported the tall
And all
gray, then we
and all
knew.
and
you
all
know.
of the women, apart from one who decided she did not want to be an automatic rider, all of them have been automatic riders, including my sister, currently, who's in northern
She's the
England.
4th generation of
Yeah,
it now.
yeah,
Yeah.
she uses spirit boxes and things like that. I mean, that's not
Mhm.
her main. It's not her main profession, but since my parents died and my brother died within about 3 months of each other in 2017, which basically took out almost my whole family.
Yeah.
And within 3 months, and also he killed his 2 cats too before he killed my mom and killed himself.
I'm so
We-
sorry.
Yeah, it
Oof,
was awful. We
man.
think the early trauma of the
Yeah.
PTSD from the
started-
abductions
he
kind of made him paranoid and later in life.
He started to hear stuff that I've been hearing for the majority of my life, and he just
He
did
couldn't
not
handle
know
it,
how
yeah.
to deal with it. He thought that it was he thought that I was like driving 500 miles one way and staying on the property and sneaking in during the middle of the night and stealing coffee.
Wow.
Things
Yeah.
such as that. He set up cameras, surveillance cameras inside and outside, and he basically just lost it after my dad died. He just he just lost it. And this is the guy who taught calculus at
Mm.
a college level for fun,
He was
for
a
extra
brilliant
money.
man, but never
Okay.
emotionally stable, in
No,
my opinion.
so
He never had a long-term relationship, and
no, only once.
he became
First,
hermit-like and miserly, and then paranoid later in life. So
Yeah, I could
I
see
I
how it
lay
could stem from the abduction stuff for sure too. Because like how does one's brain usually comprehend like trauma like that?
yeah.
If you're asking me, it's gonna bury it most likely so that your subconscious just
But
immediately gets
but
that
eventually, it's going to unearth itself
bubble up.
and
Yep.
bubble
Yep.
up. Yeah.
he did really try to always like offset things with diversion as far as like
Yep.
changing the
Yep.
subject
Deflection.
or laughing about things or
Yep.
just basically making fun of things. Like, for me, I think one of the things that basically saved my life is that I started studying Tai Chi when I was 17.
The
And for
outlets. Yep.
me, yeah, for me, it's like it really helped to balance me out from the standpoint of being able to, slow down my brain waves
Right.
so that I could like, both contact and both also understand what was happening. Where my brother, when he started hearing what we call
Astral realm.
into the astral realm, when he would be
Mhm.
It's
hearing
called clairaudience.
clear audience, when he started hearing that type of stuff, he started basically accusing me of being in the house and rummaging through the house. In fact, when we went up there after he had died, we had to search for the coffee. He said,
He had it
Where's the
hidden
coffee?"
in the linen closet
He
because
had it hidden in a place like you would never even look
it
for
was
the
bizarre.
coffee. He got so paranoid at the end that he just, before he, took the shotgun and did what he did, he just couldn't deal with it. He was hearing into the next realm, and I've done that for the majority of my life.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's like, okay, what's happening this time? It's like what Mike Tyson would say. If you get hit in the face one time, all your plans go out the window, right?
Yeah, everyone
Right.
has a plan to get hit in the face.
But if you get hit in the face 500 times, 501 doesn't really mean that much. So for
Yeah,
me,
precisely. See, I
yeah,
got two things then. It's like one is I don't think we touch enough on the serious side of like the abduction stories or like the paranormal side where it's like it can be devastating to certain
Yeah.
people if they're in fragile mind states.
At
And it goes to
best,
absolutely.
prove that.
that's what I say about it is at best it's a traumatic, terrifying experience.
Mhm.
At worst, we think sometimes they're taking people and not putting them back.
Yeah,
So I think that's what has happening with a lot of our missing persons.
That's
I
definitely.
am totally on that page too, because it makes
Yeah,
no
Mm.
sense for so many people to constantly go missing, like, and to
right.
never be seen or heard again. And I've even heard instances of people disappearing for years, being found somewhere random, and then not remembering the last 25 years, but only remembering that last little moment.
And they haven't aged.
the
Yeah,
rumples,
Like they're
Yep.
just put on ice for
the
20
the
years or something.
Rumpelstiltskin effect almost in
No,
a
that's
way.
Rip
Oh,
Van
Rip
Winkle.
Van, right, sorry, Rip Van Winkle, right, right, the other one, right, right.
And then Stephen had this bizarre cluster when he was 18. Again, like 5 nights in a row. For like I say, for some reason they came in clusters.
This affected the whole family, all 5 members in two
That's so
different homes,
bizarre.
350 miles apart. One that we were building up in the lower Sierras, and one
Yep.
that my dad and my sister and myself were living in Woodland Hills on Fallbrook Avenue, where I went to El Camino High School.
It's
And,
a suburb of LA.
suburb of
Mhm.
LA. So, anyways, the first night, my dad and I were cabinet makers. My dad was the master, and I was the student. When I was 18, woke up and at breakfast time, he told me that that his closet doors had opened and closed on him during the night, and I just kind of laughed it off.
You're like, ha.
Yeah, sure, Dad. It was
Cool.
a really cool dream, right? So
Yep.
the second night, this was around the time when I had started studying Tai Chi Chuan, and I was really into it, which I did for many years, still do it today. So anyway, I gave him this book to read, and he went into the living room and he was reading it. And about 9:30 at night, he came back into my bedroom, and with this really perplexed look on his face. And he said, "Stephen, I'm hearing a bell." Now, myself, having been a musician since the age of 7,
Right.
I knew what a bell sounded like. So I went into the living room, and there was this sound of a silver bell being rung, ding, ding, ding,
How
like,
bizarre.
and it was inside the wall next to the fireplace. And my dad was saying, "It's inside the wall. It's not coming from the fireplace." And I said, "You're right." And so we banged on the wall, looked at the flue, and then we said, "Well, let's get Karen." My sister was 13 at the time. So I got my sister, and she said, first thing she said was like, "Where's that bell coming from?" And so we banged on the wall, and we looked at the flue again, and went on for a good 10 minutes, and then it just stopped.
And then his mother and brother were living at the other house because his school started early up
Yes,
there.
right.
And so they, at the exact same moment, she hears a bell and picks up the phone and hears this bizarre voice on the other side that says, "I am the invisible Ambichi."
Or something to that effect.
Yeah,
We don't
maybe
do-
it was Old Glegley and
the
she
only-
heard it wrong.
The only way we found this out was because it was our tradition to call and see how my mom and my brother were doing, before school, right? So we would do that every single day,
Mhm.
because we're family. So my dad called, and my mom said, "Jeffrey, the weirdest thing happened. In like about 9 o'clock at night, I heard this bell ringing, and I thought it was the phone. And so I was next to the phone, so she picked up the phone, and she heard that baritone voice saying that. So then I asked my brother, and my brother said, "No, the phone didn't ring, Stephen."
Nope.
But didn't ring, but she did pick up the phone, and she was having a conversation. So
Wild.
it was really strange that they were happening at exactly the same time.
But
Yeah.
the next night is even crazier.
The next nights we're starting to get crazy. Okay. All
It
right,
gets even crazier than this?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
it does. Yes, it does. So next night, I was at that time in my life, I wasn't using the upper bunk bed anymore. I was just using the bottom bunk bed. So I went to sleep in my work clothes, and I was awakened in the middle of the night by this whoosh,
Like a whizzing sound.
like a whizzing
yeah.
sound in the air.
Mm.
And there was always a light on in the kitchen, so you could
Yeah.
always like kind of see the hallway. And so I turned over, I looked down the hallway, and thought, well, maybe it was a bug or something like that.
Yeah. First
Just trying
thought,
to
yeah.
make some common sense, okay?
Mhm.
And then I rolled over my left-hand side, and then my bed was pushed 2 times, gently. Push, push, from the base of the bed where my feet were. And, growing up in Southern California, I was thinking, well,
Earthquake.
earthquake,
Yeah. Yep.
maybe a little minor earthquake, whatever. Trying to just not think too much about it. And again, rolled over, wasn't asleep, and then push, push, a little stronger. And this time I'm getting a little bit scared, a little annoyed, and then
Yep.
push, push. It's like, wake up.
Very hard. Yeah.
And then now I'm getting aggravated, and then I get tap, tap, tap
Oh shit.
on my
Yeah.
right deltoid.
Like
That's
an
a
index
tap,
finger.
Tap,
Yeah.
tap, just like an index finger, but saying 1, 2, 3. I want to see you. And at this point, I'm scared and angry. So I rolled over and I said, "What?" And I can see this shimmery type of
Oh man.
thing in front of me, and then I look at it, and then I black out. Okay, told my dad about it, and he didn't know what to think about it. So we went back to work like
Yeah,
we always
definitely.
did. We just went back to work. So the next night, I decided I am not sleeping in that bedroom. So I said, "Nope, not sleeping in that bedroom. I don't know what's going to happen tonight, but I'm not sleeping there." So
Yeah, we're not tempting that.
I slept in my work clothes from the day before. 'Cause I'm a guy, So I
Yep.
just I went to sleep in my work clothes. Yeah, I slept in the living room on the sofa, and behind my head was the front door, which is about 25 feet behind me. So, anyways, to my right was my piano, and there was an extra room in front of me, which we had like a little fountain going. So, anyway, I woke up about 5:30 in the morning. This is January of 1979, when
Yep.
I'm still 18 years of age, and I looked at my piano, thinking about what I was going to play that day, and I listened to the fountain in the other room. So I was awake, no sleep paralysis. And it was as if this being, again, 6.5 foot tall, but this time blue white came from the front door vertically, kind of moved vertically, but also kind of like floating. I wanted to say it wasn't walking. You didn't hear thud, thud, thud. It
Yeah.
just basically floated, walked in about a second and a half to 2 seconds, the 25 feet, stopped by my right hand side, and the whole right side of my body, basically my whole body. But what I really perceived was the right side of my body was basically just shut off. Okay. My right eye was already open, but I could not close it even if I tried.
Wow.
And I was thinking to myself, in my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to see O'Glegley. I'm going to see our family spirit guide.
I was excited and
I'm
scared.
getting
Right,
this.
yeah.
This whole thing has been about O'Glegley. He wants to contact me, right? But the other half of me is saying, dude, you can't move. You're immobilized. So
So he's both scared and excited
I'm
at
both
the
scared and
same
excited,
time.
and I'm trying to look at this being's face, but I know what size it is. I can tell what size. I cannot quite see the face. But it bent down to my ear, and it said in my ear, not in my head, but it said in my ear, "Hi, Steve." So it knew my name for one thing.
And the whole room was flooded with this
Yes, I
blue-white light.
forgot that. Yeah, it
So
brought
it's
the
like he
whole
opened a portal,
right.
from a very bright blue-white place
Yes,
and
this being opened up, whatever.
came through it or
I can
something.
tell you for a fact we had two big trucks in our driveway at the time, and there was not a UFO that landed in our front driveway. So whatever it was came in through a portal or some type of thing that I don't know about, but it came in, and then about after 5 or 10 seconds, I guess it figured that uh, that I was maybe too scared or something, and it left. And when it left, then I blacked out again. Told my dad about it, and we went back to work. We're even more perplexed at this point. Okay. So, anyways, 11:30 rolls around, and we're both getting ready to have some lunch. So I said, Dad, I'll go down and get us some food, Jack in a Box, whatever. And so I reached into my right hand side pocket pants, and I pulled out the coins that were in there, and the dollar bills, whatever. And all the coins were magnetic. Okay, I
What the
kid you not.
hell?
These were American coins. My dad could pick them up by the edge, by the face. It didn't matter. I had a couple 6-penny nails in there too, which are not that hard to magnetize, but it doesn't matter.
The
But
coins are
the
almost
coins,
impossible.
the coins were
Yeah.
all magnetic. And this is
Yeah, I was
6
gonna say,
hours.
Yeah.
This is 6 hours after I had that experience.
And they're
What?
designed specifically, US coins, to not become magnetic, so they
Right.
can go in vending machines
Right.
and things,
God's
Exactly.
honest
Yeah.
truth. Yeah. So the final night, of the things that happened, my dad was the one that was awakened this last night, and oh, by the way, my dad was a cop in England for 4 years, from 52 to
Yep.
56.
Another straight shooter.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. He also was in the RAF too, from 50 to 52. So again, another no nonsense type of guy. So
Yep.
he saw this wall of blue white light that
Damn.
was encompassing my bedroom door. Okay, because our bedrooms were separated by a hallway, and we had our doors open, so he could see my bedroom, and he saw this intense blue white light coming out of my bedroom. And he said, well, like kind of like an ex-cop would say, like, what's all this in then from like England? And he was getting out of bed to go say, what the heck is going on? He wanted to find out what was going on, right? So, anyways, as he was getting out of bed, this voice in his head said, Jeffrey, just relax. Just go back to sleep. Nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. And that's what he did. He went back to bed. And I have absolutely no recollection of that.
Although I
Wow.
surmise that he didn't fall asleep. I think he was knocked out. They have the ability to knock people's
Yes.
memory out, right? And so,
I would think so.
because
Yeah.
he wasn't the type of guy to just take the alien's word for it that his son was fine. But the next thing he knows, he's knocked
And
out.
and even before that, I'd seen my mom prove herself as far as an automatic writer, where she knew about things that she shouldn't have known about, like when her mom died in England by falling down a cobblestone step.
O'Glegley told
stairway.
her in advance,
Yeah,
what
told her
happened before
what
official
happened.
word arrived.
1969, when she picked me up from school when she was crying, and she told me that her mom had just died from falling down steps, and then it was a day and a half later that we got a call. Again, this is 1969, so we had the old style telephones, right? So it
Yep.
wasn't like today. So, but yeah, it was, when her father died, when her
And Uncle
uncle
Clifford
Uncle
too.
Clifford,
She knew in
and
advance.
and other stuff like that too. So I grew up in a family where like if you told other people about this kind of stuff, they'd either, especially as like in elementary school, they'd either think you were lying or you were
Right.
crazy,
Crazy. Yeah.
or that you
Exactly.
were living in a haunted house.
And
You
so
know,
at age 30, he starts to try and make sense of this and starts doing his research.
right?
And then, I'm like 45 years old before anything happens to me. By then he'd already seen 3 UFOs and had countless of these weird, paranormal
Right.
experiences. And I had seen nothing yet. And I was getting a little jealous, to be honest. I wanted to see
Right.
something. And
Right.
then there it was finally in 2005, January 2005. We're driving home together and we see a white light in front of us through the windshield. And I thought a plane maybe flying into Palm Springs Airport, but it didn't have running lights. It was just a round white light and it wasn't
Yep.
really behaving like a plane.
Yeah,
It
your initial thought is plane,
Yeah,
but
it's usually plane, right? But then it stopped in the air above the highway where we were hurtling towards
Yeah,
it,
Highway 62 going from Joshua Tree to Yucca Valley.
Well, yeah, we were in Joshua Tree when it happened, though, and so we're staring at this thing, and it starts out about twice as bright as Venus, maybe, but it grew brighter and brighter and brighter till it was about half the brightness of the moon, say, and then it took off north and gone over the northern horizon in a quarter of a second. It moved
Yep.
so fast that
Yep, defied
visually,
logic.
visually it streaked into a line that collapsed on itself.
Whoa.
And then it was like, I finally seen one because it can't be anything else, right? When
Right.
a white light that can be in any number of things, but when it moves at 20,000 miles an hour or whatever
Yeah,
the
it like
speed was,
nothing on this earth can do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it wasn't
No
even-
way.
yeah,
On
it
top
wasn't
of that,
even-
like no aerospace engineering can make things stop on a dime in the air. Like that's
Yeah.
impossible.
And make V turns, angular V turns.
Right.
When we want to turn an aircraft around, we have to slowly bank in a big U, where these things, the second UFO I saw that we saw together was making these zigzaggy turns at full speed, but in V's, shapes.
without
with-
sound. This was actually
Yeah.
in our backyard where we live now. 2020, right? 2020.
Yes,
Yes.
October of 2020.
Yeah, it
Heck
was
yeah.
it was really strange. Again, it was like about 9:30 at night. We have a very small backyard, a very very small view of the sky, and it was just like this. This is the way I feel about it. Leslie doesn't feel the same way, but the way I feel about it, we had just moved from Yucca Valley to Desert Hot Springs.
He thought they were like saying, "Hi, Steve. We
It
know
was
where
basically
you are."
it's basically the area of the sky that we had to see was so small, and they were just right there when we came out. And I just wish I'd had the chance to go get my cell phone,
camera,
whatever,
yeah.
or but it was just like, again, soundless, making impossible moves, and pretty big. It was a round
Again,
white
round white light.
round white light. It
That-
was pretty big.
And again, it
About
shot
about
away
half
north.
about half the size of the moon,
Yeah.
and it was just doing its crazy stuff, and then it shot off to the north.
Again, at supersonic speed.
Yep.
And I still have interactions with these beings.
More in the
to this-
psychic realm, though.
to this
it
day.
seems like
To this day.
it seems like as soon as he goes into like the hypnopompic state or the hypnagogic
Mm.
state, that between sleep and wakefulness.
Yeah.
Frequently they're there. It's like they're on the other side of the veil waiting for him or something.
Yeah.
I-
I mean, I feel like people always think that aliens are just like a linear thing where they like exist in this plane of dimension where it's
I
like
think
no,
they
they're
can exist
dimensional
in
beings.
planes of dimensions that we don't even understand.
Our souls are most likely the carriages that are the key to us being like able to like traverse these dimensions as well.
So I do have to ask this, since we were talking about this before we went live, that there's probably a connection between paranormal and aliens. Do you think that there are like, okay, I'm trying to word this so I don't sound super crazy, but like sometimes aliens aren't actually what we think, but they're ascended humans. So it's like humans that have reached a level of enlightenment to where they become spiritual beings.
Right. In fact, that's
That
very close to what we think.
that is partially what we think.
Yeah,
Yes.
what we think
Bravo.
is, I mean, when we started looking at the abduction phenomenon, researching it in earnest, we discovered that it's not what everyone was thinking. They thought, well, the aliens are just curious. It's scientific curiosity.
And they're coming from Arcturus.
They're
and
taking a
Pleiades.
few
They want to probe our buttholes.
Yes, exactly.
So they're taking a few samples, putting people back, no big deal, but that's not what's happening. What happens is they find a genetic line of people that they want, that meet their criteria, and then they'll take them again and again and again, and then they'll start taking their kids and their grandkids. It's like there's a specific genetic line that they're after. And so we started researching as, okay, well, what genetic line is that? And we know there's a psychic connection. They tend to be after people who are psychic. 9 out of 10 are Caucasian. And then we start thinking, well, what the hell do Arcturans want with Caucasian DNA? You know, I mean, specifically, if you're interested in humans, why not all humans, you know?
Right.
And so then we started researching the UFO phenomenon itself and finding that it couldn't, it wasn't aligning with the theories that they're coming here from all different places like that. We kept hearing hundreds, maybe even thousands of reports that I've read where they're launching from some sort of underground base here, like out of lakes, out of the ocean, out of volcanoes, out of, out of mesas and ridges,
and for your audience, the Caucasian race only makes up 16% of the Earth's population.
Yeah, so why
very
particularly that?
Minute.
So when we looked, also we started looking at our UFO data differently, and then we heard about Admiral Byrd's diary many years ago, but there's this new data that's come out recently, a Soviet intelligence report from 1947 has surfaced.
Wasn't it 86 or
and then it was aired in a documentary on Russian television in 1986.
Okay.
This documentary is on YouTube. It's easy to find. But in the 30s, Hitler had this bizarre interest in Antarctica. He was combing the Queen Maud coast with his U-boats.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
And then one of his U-boat captains was quoted in the press as saying, "I have discovered a paradise under the ice for mein Führer and our homeland," kind of thing.
Yes.
And then Hitler sends enormous resources to the continent. And then after the war, U.S. intelligence surmised that the Nazis had a hidden base under the ice.
There was some kind of threat there that we had to address.
Right. So they sent Admiral Byrd. He was head of this armada of ships that they sent, like a carrier group back then.
It was the biggest armada flotilla at the time.
And so he gets down to Antarctica, and they're attacked by flying saucers that came up out of the ocean, shot like a squadron of these things.
Yeah, USOs.
And they shot a ray of some kind at the ships and sank one of the ships and killed many men and downed half of Byrd's aircraft.
And took down one ship, right?
One of the destroyer was taken out.
Many of the airplanes.
And then we surmised that he didn't want to go back to Washington and said, "Hey, I got my butt kicked and I know nothing about them, I know nothing about them." So I think the whole diary thing then happens, right? Where he gets one of his planes. We've heard about this giant hole in a no-fly zone in Antarctica.
Yes.
And there's still so many of them.
And we think that he flew his plane, just like he said, into this under the ice world and met with these people that he said they're men, right? And he met with them, and they're called the Ariani. And they said, normally we have nothing to do with you barbarians and your wars and stuff on the surface, but we had to make an exception because you've learned to crack the atom.
Yeah.
And
split the atom.
And so since then, we've seen that the UFOs are incredibly interested in our nukes. They park over nuclear facilities and nuclear bases, and they follow our military every single time they go out on maneuvers.
Yeah, and ours and the Chinese and the Russians and whoever has nuclear capabilities. The British too. The British talk about it quite a bit.
So we surmise that these really are men that have separated, at least the Nordics, are human men who've separated from us And then we started looking at why. Why would they separate? And we have so many stories. I have my minor was in ancient art history, and
I love that.
I studied like the Great Flood, and I believe the Great Flood really happened at the time. There were 500 separate flood myths in this one book I read back in college.
By Fraser, right?
Yeah, by a guy named Fraser, Scottish anthropologist. He wrote this in the 1800s. Since then, there have been 1,200. There's almost 1,200 of these stories where separate 1,200 separate cultures have their own Noah story, so to speak.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And
At that
Hancock-
point, how can you say it didn't happen? It's like
Yeah.
The
It's
younger
just a
dryad.
worldwide shared event of
the
some
Younger
kind.
Dryas comet, correct?
Yep.
it's just how we've constantly said this over the history of our show, that if you look at every culture in the entire world, they all have stories of life after death. So
They do, yeah.
and worshiping life after death. And how do you not say that something happens after we die that we don't fully understand if every culture that's ever existed looks at life after death as something more than just you're dead and you go to heaven or hell?
Or
Right.
these
It's like
star
a shared
people.
in our consciousness, our shared consciousness.
It's a collective unconsciousness, correct? Collective consciousness.
So at first, we thought this. I looked at this extinction event of 13,000 years ago as the probable flood time, right? We lost the mammoth and the mastodon, and the Clovis people were wiped out. The saber-toothed cat, the dire wolf,
The camel.
American horse and camel. A lot of animals were wiped out at the same time. And then they discovered 4 decades ago, they discovered nanodiamonds in 13,000-year-old soil. And nanodiamonds only form during celestial impacts of some kind, right?
Yeah.
So-
This was a high concentration too.
Yeah.
Like some scientists have said, oh well, you can find nanodiamonds anywhere, but it's the concentration, and it's
Yeah.
in the soil layer in 10 different countries so far on 4 different continents, all
Wow.
occurring in high density at the same time, 12,850 years ago.
And since then, at first we thought it was the Hiawatha asteroid crater because that was discovered in 2016. And unfortunately, we wrote it in the book that way. But since then, that one's been dated to 45 million years ago. But the Younger Dryas comet, that has been dated to the right age. It's 12,850 years ago, and it struck in what's now Lake Superior.
Yep.
So we think that's the cause of the Great Flood. And we think that the human beings of 13,000 years ago were more advanced than we give them credit for now.
I
think so
agree
too, for
100%.
sure.
A lot
with you.
more. All the evidence.
You're welcome.
All the evidence points to that.
It points to a time when most people believe you just slowly advance until you go to the moon, right?
Right.
From the caves to the moon. But we did that. We advanced to a certain level and then were knocked down and then had to start over again 13,000 years ago.
I think that what we're seeing left over from the ancient Mayans and the Egyptians and everything is just what is left from being buried from that catastrophic event that happened. I believe if we were to dig deeper and deeper into the Earth's crust, we would find so much more that we don't understand. Like the Earth is layers of different layers of time on top of each other. We have to dig way further than we would ever think to find the true origins of Earth.
And one of our chapters it's called So Many Impossible Things. There are so many ancient megalithic structures that are attributed to people who absolutely cannot have built them,
Physically impossible.
With copper or bronze tools. And then you have to look at the mom theory, means, opportunity, and motive. What would be their motivation to build Sacsayhuaman, without any mortar? Okay.
And that's andesite stone, which is a 7 on the Mohs scale. That's harder than granite, or it's the same hardness as the hardest granites. And they only had bronze tools. You can hit an andesite block with a bronze tool all day long, and you're just going to break the tool. Yeah, you'll just wreck the tool.
Yeah.
So we surmised that 13,000 years ago, they were advanced enough. They had advanced astronomy to see this thing coming, because all of the flood myths almost start the same way.
And we
were warned. We were warned by God or God emissary or a disembodied voice that a horrible flood was coming, and to build an ark or go to high ground or dig in underground. And so many cultures, we have these stories about people retreating underground. And this would be the Younger Dryas about to clobber you is a really, really good reason to sink cities underground. And so we think they went underground. They took their technology with them.
Yep.
The rest of us schmoes on the surface were almost wiped out to a man, and then we had to regenerate from a population of only 10,000. There was a genetic bottleneck that shows we were reduced to a population.
Now that we've developed gene mapping and DNA mapping, we know that there was a genetic bottleneck at that almost at the exact time period where the human race was reduced on surface dwellers to about 10,000 or less. I mean, obviously, there'd be a few more survivors in the southern hemisphere, like in Australia, whatever. But as far as like in the northern hemisphere, 99% were probably wiped out.
Yep.
But probably not everybody, but most everybody. But it was one of these things we were warned about. But it's a little bit of the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
The ones that were
rich enough to build cities underground, maybe, or
but it's like we're not dealing with they weren't dealing with 8 billion people back then, as far as we can tell. But now we're dealing with 8 billion people.
And so if they are who we think they are more advanced both spiritually and physically and also technologically.
Yep.
That's why they're 13,000 years ahead of us. We all of us surface people were thrown back into the Stone Age, and had to start over as hunter-gatherers again.
Yeah, at least.
And we think they stayed underground because of the soil levels of 13,000 years ago show drastic climate upheavals for 1,100 years after the impact. They wouldn't have been able to grow crops on the surface for 1,100 years.
Sustain.
And then just a couple of generations, probably they'd be afraid to come back on the surface.
Yeah, human beings are really adaptable. We all know that you have a couple generations growing up in a underground world that you have everything you need. Whatever food source they have at that time would be different than we had on the surface, but they would adapt. The kids would adapt to that. They think of the surface like kind of like we think of like outer space.
Right.
It's something that is a hostile environment, so a scary hostile environment. So yeah.
So when we took the Admiral Byrd stories and the flood stories and all these ideas and applied them to our UFO data, suddenly everything clicks into place. It's like, oh, that's why they're taking Caucasians. They happen to be a branch of the Caucasian race, the ones taking us mostly, right? Like the Nordics, they're indistinguishable from Scandinavian humans. Why? They're Scandinavian humans, and
right.
They look like Scandinavians.
And this is why we think they're taking our genetic material, our DNA, because we think maybe they've become less viable living underground. And perhaps need regular infusions of DNA from surface individuals.
That gets back to the Admiral Byrd thing. For instance, most people don't realize that there have been over 2,000 nuclear detonations since 1945, and
that's a lot. Yeah,
we're talking about people that are a more advanced version of ourselves that are living here, cohabitating with ourselves. I think that would get somebody's attention.
Okay? Yeah, you think so?
And we know the government became aware of these beings at some point. In 1941, there was another Roswell type incident. There was a crash in Cape
Girardeau.
Girardeau, I think it's pronounced, Missouri. And that time they scooped up all the evidence and took it to Wright-Patterson without the media circus that became true with Roswell, right? So we don't know when exactly they discovered these beings, but certainly by then they knew about them.
Yeah, they had to have known.
Yeah. And Mussolini had a crashed ship in the
1930s.
In the 30s, there was one in Italy. So, of course, that meant Hitler had the information too. And that's where we think his interest in Antarctica, somehow he track them back to a source
And he
coming
was
from
very much
Antarctica.
into mysticism and the Thule Society, and he was very
Right.
much influenced by that kind of stuff too. So
Right.
yeah, so
And
It always fascinated me that people were like, "Oh, there's nothing in Antarctica. Hitler is just crazy." Well, actually, Hitler was actually somewhat of a very intelligent man. He would, if there wasn't anything in Antarctica, why would he focus and waste so much time and effort on looking into Antarctica?
right while he's preparing for a world war, you know.
watch what they do, not what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good thing.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the theory. We think it's a breakaway population of humans, and that's why they're breeding with, and we think they're breeding with us too. That's another thing with the abduction phenomenon. About 10% of abductees are women who claim to have been taken and impregnated by aliens, and sometimes it's just having sex. And then 4 months later, they're taken again, and the fetus is stolen. And they take, when they take the fetus, they take the entire placenta, so it looks like the womb is completely empty. And this has been documented now with ultrasound evidence.
Many times.
And
So bizarre.
and then
That's
sometimes,
actually insane.
and then later they're introduced to their years
And-
later. Sometimes
and-
they're introduced to their hybrid offspring.
And
you know.
frequently it happens to the same woman, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
The doctors have no explanation. It says it looks like, you have never been pregnant. There's no scar tissue.
Wow.
There's no evidence at all, but it always happens when the fetus is almost exactly 5 centimeters.
4 or 5 months old. Yeah.
5 centimeters is basically the size of a baseball. Okay. So it seems to be the criterion as they take them at that time. And sometimes some of the women are reintroduced at a later time to their quote unquote star children.
Hybrid offspring.
Their hybrid
yeah.
offspring.
So what's the hybrid? Why are they breeding with us, right?
Right.
First of all, if they can breed with us so easily,
Yes.
again, that's pointing right to being human, right?
Yeah,
And,
it does.
And then why? Why do they want to do this? We think it's because they want to infiltrate our society and possibly change us from the inside out, because they're not getting what they want. When they met with Eisenhower, supposedly the Nordics, right, met with
Yep.
Eisenhower,
Yep.
and they wanted us to denuclearize. That's their main goal, and they didn't get what they wanted. And so, but we obviously cut some sort of a deal with them, like we'll keep your secret if you share your tech
Valiant
with
Thor,
us,
right?
you know.
It's
Yeah.
just like the Valiant Thor story, kind of.
Who guess what?
Partly.
He's a man, right? He was
Yeah.
a Caucasian, red-haired man, right? So
There's actual real pictures of him people have
Yeah.
found
There's-
on the internet.
Yes, there is at least one that we have seen.
yeah,
Yes.
he's a human being, and he landed his spaceship in Virginia Field and says, "Take me to your leader." And he claimed to be from Venus, so they have no qualms about lying to us, because obviously Venus is nobody lives on Venus, you
Yeah,
know.
it's
and-
nobody's
I mean-
business
I
there,
mean,
right?
what alien is gonna tell you the exact location he's from? That's just ridiculous.
You
Right.
never do that. It's like you're playing chess. You're not going to say what your next move is going to be.
Right.
Right,
You
come on.
never give that away. I mean, that's ridiculous.
And
But-
so I think they're terrified of our nukes, which is why they're following our nukes every
Hmm.
single place we go with them. And why would they be so scared of our nukes? Because they live here. If we blow up the planet, we kill them too. So they're not coming from Arcturus. They're not coming from the Pleiades. They're coming from underground bases, and they
And
have,
cities.
and we think they have
Very developed
joint. There are joint U.S. military / alien bases where
Yeah.
they're working together at these bases, and one of them is the Dulce Air Force
I've heard
Base.
of this too. Yeah.
And
the Indians and the local Indians have known this for years.
Yeah.
They
and
talk-
they see it like they see the Dulce is the Archuleta Mesa. It's under the Archuleta Mesa, and the local Native Americans have seen a hole open up on the side of the mesa, and
Mhm.
UFOs shoot in
Yeah.
and out of it, and
Yeah.
then it closes up like a duck blind again, And there was a security guard who gave us the Dulce papers. Supposedly the Dulce base is 7 levels deep,
Mhm.
and the top 5 levels are human occupied only, and the 2 bottom levels are alien / human occupied. And we have a few different stories. Phil Schneider's story comes out of there, where he actually took down a wall by accident and was face to face with a bunch of aliens. But that was a different story. The Dulce papers talk about this security guard who went to the lower levels he wasn't supposed to go to, and he saw all these vats, and in these vats were gray and hybrid alien beings being
Wow.
grown. We think that's where they're taking the fetuses, right?
What-
Yeah.
And putting them in the vat to finish growing.
One
you
of the
know?
places, yeah, exactly.
So interesting.
So now you have the theory roughly.
A little bit of it, yes.
And so one thing I like about our theories is it doesn't require any theoretical physics.
No, it
You
doesn't.
don't have to travel from distant star systems to
Or
here.
wormholes, or time travel.
And
I mean,
and we don't know about interdimensional. Maybe we know they open portals and walk through them, but
yeah,
but is that interdimensional
Yeah, is
travel?
that
think-
Maybe
well,
it is.
is
I
that
don't
the
know.
technology too?
Yeah,
Is it
exactly. That's what I was
technology?
going to say. What if it's more of just a technology than it is just a dimension opening, more or less
Right,
like some type of
exactly.
electrical energy fusion or something. I don't know how to really put the words together.
exactly. The stuff that happened to me in 1979 that affected myself and my whole family. Like I said, there was no UFO that landed in our front yard because of the two big trucks we had in
Right.
there. So they had to have the ability to manipulate matter to a certain degree, obviously, because whatever being came through a door and then left through a door.
And with
Right.
we
But
think
it wasn't a time
yeah,
traveler.
and we think the blue white light is just it was really bright blue white light where he was. And when he opened the door,
Well, yeah,
it flooded into the room, with and along with his presence.
It could be what the eyes were able to perceive too, but you
True.
hear this,
Exactly,
you hear this.
because our eyes can only see so much of the light spectrum. So I bet you if you had like a cat's eyes where they see different levels of light spectrum, you would have seen something
They
completely
see so
different.
much different
Yeah.
than we do. They
Well,
really
and
do.
plus, like, if we like try to like comprehend how much energy that would take also to like open a space to be able to move matter through it, we physically human beings are not able to produce that type of energy at this time. There's just no
And
way.
you got to
Yeah.
look at the motivation too. Why would they?
Yeah, why?
Why? It must be really easy for one standpoint, but there also was a reason why. I mean, I know that my life was saved. I can tell you the
Right.
exact date. My life was saved April the 1st, 1992 at Nicholas Canyon Beach when I was body surfing and I was with my ex-wife and I went out too far. And this is, Pacific Ocean. So the ocean isn't
Yep.
warm on April 1st of, at any time. Okay,
Mhm.
on the Pacific Ocean. So it was pretty cold. And I wasn't wearing any bodysuit. I was just wearing my shorts,
Yep.
So I
Getting
went out
after it.
there. This went out there. I was basically 31 years of age. I hadn't even turned 32, and I used to like body surfing. So I went out there with some guys, and they all started going in, right? And I was pretty far out there, and I thought,
Maybe I should go in
I thought, well,
too.
maybe they're going in. They're going in. I
Hmm.
I didn't know the guys. I just kind of went out with them, So they already went in. I thought, well, I should start going in too. So I start breaststroking in, and I'm not getting anywhere. Okay, just like I said, oh crap.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
I'm in like a riptide or something like that. So, and then I'd start going a little harder, and then I realized that all of a sudden, for the only time in my life, my arms went numb. Okay, they became like lead.
Ooh,
I
no.
could not move them, and now I had been in the Navy, right? So I was still
Yep.
in the Navy doing reserve duty. I said, well, maybe I can float, but then I thought if I float, I'm going to be pulled
Right
back
back
out
out.
Further
further
out,
out,
yeah.
right? And so I thought, well, my only chance is to oh, I see the lifeguard, right? He's like a good 150, 175 feet away from me. He's on the
Yeah.
shore back at the lifeguard tower, and he's flirting with these two or
It's
three,
like not paying any fucking
two or
attention
three,
to
two or
that.
three girls, right?
Of course he is.
And so I get my right arm up. I say, help. And then I said, well, he didn't hear me because the waves were crashing, right?
Yeah.
And I say, help again. And then finally I said, I have to do this, otherwise I am dead. And I
Right.
just said, I yelled help as loud as I could. And then one of the girls, I guess, saw me and then told the lifeguard, and then I went down.
And he turns around and sees him though,
Yeah.
just
Right,
a split
yeah.
second
Right.
before he
And
goes
so
down.
I'm
yeah.
down 6 feet, and I'm starting to see the light.
Oh
And
shit.
I know,
Yeah.
no kidding. This is no joke. Okay. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm going to take my last breath, and oh, this isn't going to be so bad. That I'm about ready to die. I know I'm about ready to die. And then this guy or this being, okay, went faster than Michael Phelps could ever swim. Okay.
Mhm.
He covered from the lifeguard tower to the beach to finding me 6 feet under in waves
In a
and
Right,
riptide.
grabbed
yeah.
in a riptide and grabbed my arm and pulled me up and said, "Relax, sir. You'll be okay." And he did the thing like this around my neck and pulled me in. And when I got out of, I could barely walk when I got out of the surf, and I could not move my arms. I could barely move my arms. My ex-wife was just all embarrassed and all pissed off at me. So anyway, so I wanted to I wanted to thank the guy, and he was gone.
Huh.
Don't know where he went. No, nobody knew about him, but
Yeah,
somebody
what?
brought me in. Okay, it wasn't me. Okay, and this happened on April the 1st, 1992, at Nicholas Canyon Beach, and I should have been dead.
We think
Okay.
that the we think this old Glegley person is the family handler, so to speak, and
Hmm.
because they, like I said, they prey on the family and protect the family, like a farmer would protect his
Yeah, you
crop.
would. It's your
Cow, you know?
livestock. Exactly. That's as
Yeah.
terrible as that sounds. It's so
It
accurate.
makes sense though, because there's so many
Yeah.
people that have these crazy near life experiences and then are brought back. Like there's a YouTube channel out there, I forget what it's called, but they interview people that had near life experiences, and a lot of their experiences are similar to where they were rescued by someone that no one else saw, no one else remembers them, no one else.
It's a very
Exactly.
common story.
Yeah.
Like
Happened
it's
twice to
just
me.
they
Yeah.
describe the person, they're like, there was nobody here like that. And
Yeah, he asked his
Oh,
wife,
oh.
where did you see the lifeguard? What lifeguard? You know, it's like,
This next one, I'll tell you, is just for the fun of it. Okay, this happened in the year 2000. Okay, I was driving a Ford Ranger at the time. Okay, and I only my work was only like a half a mile away from where I live, but I decided to get in my Ranger and just drive to work. Right, and I was so far out of gas that quarter mile from it, I just ran out of gas.
Oh no.
And but there was a gas station, Union 76 on the left-hand side near where I was working as an acupuncturist. And I decided, no, screw it. I'll just get out of my truck, and I'll just push it. But I didn't know that I had a heart aneurysm at the time.
he
And
was
so
undiagnosed at the
I was
time.
undiagnosed. So I'm trying to push this thing, and I'm just really, really laboring. Okay. And I just think, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, especially with oncoming traffic, right? So I'm pushing it. And then this white guy with these big eyes, comes out of nowhere, opens the passenger side door, and looks at me with these big crazy eyes and says, "Ramming speed, Captain." And he grabs the side, and we both push the thing into the 76 parking lot. You got to go up the ramp, right? Whatever.
Yep.
We got it in there, and I'm going. I want to say thank you, buddy, and gone,
He's gone too.
just gone, just gone. Really, just
Wild.
disappeared. This happened to me at least twice in my life.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, but for a guy to like just see you and just like say with these big, great, like crazy eyes saying ramming speed, Captain, with the smile on his face, and then he
Yeah,
grabs it,
it's so odd, but it's so
it's odd, but it happened.
A lot,
Yeah,
and
but
it
it
happens to a lot
happened.
of people, like you said.
I had an experience once with a person. To this day, I don't know if they were real or not. I really don't. I was outside of a club. I was going through a lot of mental stuff at the time. And I guess I had just looked really down and out of it outside of this club. And I had this gentleman come up to me and talk to me about life for 15 minutes or so. And I had a friend that was outside of the club with me. And he said I was standing there all by myself and I wasn't talking to anyone. But I swear on my life, I had a very in-depth, intelligent conversation with an individual for about 15 minutes. And
Who just
no
decided to
one,
talk about
no one,
life, right?
yeah, and like put me in a better mental space.
Uh-huh.
Didn't see him at the club the rest of the night. Couldn't even moments later, couldn't even remember what this man looked like. Couldn't even tell you to this day what color his hair was, what his eyes looked like, what he was wearing, nothing. I just know that I had this conversation with this guy outside of the club, and he reshifted how I was
centered
feeling
you.
in that moment. And no one else seen him, no one else saw me talking to him, and I don't know how to explain it still to this day. It makes me wonder, was it one of these spiritual humans that came to talk to me and
Mhm.
maybe convinced me out of a headspace that would have put me in danger later. I don't know.
We know they can read minds
Yeah.
because they can communicate with us telepathically.
Actually, reading minds is easier than it is to like read language. In
Yeah,
fact,
you don't have to
it's
learn
much
9,000
simpler.
languages.
It's
Just
much simpler.
Right.
So it's like, these these advanced humans, they don't have to learn 10,000 different languages. All they have to do. You see, language is basically when you think of the word tree in whatever language, the 10,000 different
Yeah,
languages,
you see
you
a
don't
tree.
think you see a tree. All right, you don't think of TREE in English, right? You
Mhm.
see a tree, whether it be an oak tree or a cedar tree or pine tree,
in your
whatever it
mind's
is. Right,
eye.
that's the way that things are encoded in the human brain.
That makes so
So
much more sense with telepathy now.
it
Like, not
makes
gonna lie.
that's the
Yes.
way it works. That's the way the human brain works. I
And
should know.
when Stephen and I got together, I started doing Tai Chi with him. And Tai
Mhm.
Chi is a moving meditation. It causes your chakras to open, just like any kind of meditation would do
Yeah.
so, right? And then we actually started studying Kundalini raising exercises,
Yeah.
deep meditation, chanting to open up the chakras. And as we did these practices,
With teachers.
yeah, we had a teaching group. And as we started doing these practices, Steve became more and more and more telepathic, where he was just constantly pulling my thoughts out of my head. And I realized at some point that telepathy is actually a human birthright, but it's something that has atrophied in us from lack of use and lack of practice to keep it open and going. But it has not atrophied, and we call them our cousins. We don't call them
Cousins.
extraterrestrials.
Yeah, we don't call them
Yeah,
extraterrestrials.
we
No.
coined the term intraterrestrial, and I think that's our word,
I like
nobody
that.
else. But
Yeah.
and that's have you noticed in when you talk to whistleblowers like in Congress or the hearings and stuff, whenever people in the know are questioned about whether these are extraterrestrials or not, they start equivocating. They start saying, "Oh well, we don't want to attribute a source for these creatures, these beings, and yet we have dead alien bodies and crashed
Yeah,
alien ships,
exactly.
They do not want to say that they're extraterrestrials.
It may be because they're not.
They sidestep it very. They use semantics, but they always sidestep the issue because they're not
It's
extraterrestrials.
because they're finding humanoid organic material
Right.
and they
That's
can't
right.
figure out what the fuck to do with it because they're
That's
like,
right.
we can't document these people
Right.
because they're aliens.
We
Because
have
they're not aliens, right?
we have one little DNA evidence that backs up our theories, which I love this evidence. This guy in Australia was awakened in the middle of the night to two women in his bedroom on his bed.
Lucky guy.
No, it's still rape,
Oh god.
So they rape him while he's paralyzed, and one of the women he described as having white hair and her eyes were too large and her cheek and jaw were pointed kind of.
Yeah, like a little more
Uh,
disproportionate.
yeah,
Yes.
he called her a hybrid being, right?
Mhm.
And then in the morning he woke up and there were two of these hairs in bed with him from her. And he gets them analyzed. And first of all, they're a clear type of hair, like fishing line. And
Yeah, what?
there's supposed to be no human type that's clear. Even albinos don't have clear,
No, it's got
perfectly clear
pigment in
hair.
it.
Right.
So it's tests as non-human that way, but when they genetically test it, it's human. But this bizarre mixture of human DNA, it's Basque and Gaelic and Chinese, a subset of Chinese population makes only 1%.
Mhm.
And so this bizarre mixture of DNA, but human DNA. But it's a type of hair that's never been seen before. So we're talking about humans that have mutated.
Yep.
So they're mutants.
Yeah, I
They're
was saying, it's
different than
definitely a
us a
mutation.
little bit.
Yeah. In a positive direction. Yes. Mhm.
It would also make sense on why like you can see some of these beings and some people can't. Because if you can if you can somehow like change the pigment of your skin as well, and like do like the cloaking, if you want to call it that, that would make sense because that could be a mutation of sorts too. Where like
I
their
think they
pigment
also have
changes.
the ability to make you misremember things. Like, I
That
think that
too.
they have the ability to affect memory to the point where other people don't see them because they're putting out this aura of "Don't see me, don't see me, don't see me."
Like what happened with you,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
like with
Yeah.
myself, with the guy saying ramming speed because nobody else saw this guy.
Yeah.
As far as I knew, I pushed that, the truck in myself, because he was, it was a complete intersection, so there's no way for this guy to go on foot that I couldn't see him. Okay, just like the lifeguard, there was no place for him to go. Plus, I almost died.
Right. Yeah.
As a lifeguard, you're not just gonna like just abandon the guy that almost died that you just pulled in.
Yeah, they're gonna make sure
And
you're
big
okay,
ship
right?
Yeah.
is gone. Okay, all right. So yeah, so it's like you always gotta watch what they're doing, not what they're saying.
And we
That's
think
the thing.
when they went underground, they took herd animals with them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And we think they too are becoming non-viable living underground. And that's what the whole cattle mutilation thing is about.
That
And
would make sense.
yeah,
yeah.
they're
Well,
always taking the animals of man. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's not always cattle, it's sheep and goats and horses, but 90% of it is the animals of man,
Yeah.
with rare
and
exceptions.
what would light beings, quote unquote, from the Pleiades or Arcturus and whatever that are a million years ahead of us, what the hell would they want with cow blood?
Or cow sperm,
Why would they want to exsanguinate cows and take the sex organs and the sky facing eye and the tongue? It's like, you got to look at what they're actually doing. Okay. But if somebody's living here, they actually have herds that are like Leslie said, becoming less viable, maybe even because of our nukes or whatever it may be, is that they would have. In fact, the first cattle mutilation was documented in 1660, I believe, in England.
There's a
Okay,
woodcut showing all these dead
so
sheep in the
So
in the
cool.
field. Yeah.
so it goes back a long way, but it's
Yeah,
become
it does.
more prevalent. So you got to look at what they're doing. So it makes more sense that that we have a lot more to do with it than.
So, but before we go tonight, I do have one theory I want to run across to you because I've been thinking about this recently, and our conversation tonight has kind of made me think even deeper on it. So, dreams. We
Mhm.
have dreams. A lot of people have dreams. Some people claim they don't have any dreams at all. Do you think that dreams could potentially be like some type of memory from a past life or a past spiritual connection that our brain is reliving for us to, like, I know it sounds super crazy, but I've thought about this to where some dreams are so vivid that you feel them, right? And you wake up and sometimes you might even be sore from the dream. Like you have something happen in the dream, like your arm got hit and you wake up and the side of your arm is numb. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience, but I have.
I've got something to tell you about that. Um, we just did our documentary, Who They Are, that is on YouTube. Okay, the guy who came over, Jeremy Norrie, to film our documentary back in, what was it, August? Yeah, it was late August. Okay, we met him July the 4th up in Big Bear. I never met this guy in my life. Kind of a wiry kind of guy, and said he
Mhm.
was listening to what I was saying and said, I'd like to do a documentary on you two. And so I said, okay. So he came over to our house in Desert Hot Springs. But 2 nights before he came over, I had this extremely vivid dream where I sat down with this guy who I just met. Okay, first time in my life only. And we're sitting at our table here in our house. And he was saying that he was going to have to be going very soon. He had to go to Arizona, and then also too that he was complaining about left-sided shoulder and chest pain. And so I told Leslie 2 days before he came over, I said, Leslie, ask Jeremy these two questions. Okay. Ask him these two specific questions. And she asked him both those questions. And he said yes to both of them. He said, how did you know? How did you know?
He
Well,
does have these precog dreams a
I've
lot.
had
Yeah.
four. I've had four
Well,
of
not a
them.
lot, but
Four
four,
of
yeah.
them. Four that I can recall. I've had three in the past 4 years, and I had one in 2000 in 1998
When
that actually came true.
when
But
we were studying the Kundalini raising things, one of the things they teach you is how to astral project. And whenever you're dreaming, your astral body is already separated from your physical body,
yes,
floating above your physical body, kind of wrapped in a dream cocoon. And one of the ways to consciously astral project is to wake up inside the dream.
Right.
As you do these practices, you're going to start dreaming clearer and clearer and clearer, and you get to the point where you have some control over the dream. That's called lucid dreaming. But you
Yeah.
can also banish the dream. If you can make yourself look at your hands while you're dreaming,
Mhm.
everything suddenly becomes clearer in the dream, and you can say, "Dream be gone," and the dream will waft away, and you'll be looking at your cottage cheese ceiling at your house, right? And then at that point, you're able to astral project and go anywhere you want.
Yes.
So the more you open your chakras, the more your dreams will become clearer and clearer and more real until the point where you can actually banish them and go your merry way astrally.
Yes. It's a little scary for most people, but it's
Yeah,
definitely something that you can do.
in high school, I became like obsessed with lucid dreaming, and I practiced it for a very long time until I actually ended up having my first successful, like, full lucid dream, where I did the whole thing where I seen my hands, was able to, like, look at myself, and was like, "Oh my god, I have, like, a free will, essentially. I can do whatever I want."
Mhm.
And I said, "I'm going to shoot towards the sun." And I shot towards the sun until it got really bright, and then I said, "I'm scared, I'm done." And then it ended.
Right.
And
Slam back into your body.
I did, yeah. I woke up and I was like, "Oh my," like, instantly it was like awake, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. It's
That was
funny. It's
crazy.
funny, especially when you're young and you don't have so much karma that you have accumulated. It's actually a lot easier to do.
And it's
It's
fun,
it's
too.
yeah,
I
it's
still have, so, like, the book I read, I forget what it's called. I believe it was called Lucid Dreams. It was one written by a woman. I don't remember her name, but she said to hide a object somewhere that only you know where it is, only you know
Yeah.
what it is, and if you can't find it in your lucid dream, then you are in a lucid dream. But if you find it, then you are in your physical state.
You're astral
Oh.
projecting, yeah. Yes.
There's also a really good book called The Art of Astral Projection.
Yeah, I read the
which
first
is
chapter, and that
yeah.
very night I got out for the first time, and it's kind of funny because I popped out of my body, and I was only about 6 inches from the cottage cheese ceiling, and I was so surprised that it worked. I went, "Wow!" And I slammed right back into my body so hard that my physical body, like, jumped in the
Yeah,
bed,
you do the,
like,
the
"Whoa,"
whole, like, "Ugh."
and that's what you mean by if that's what you mean by it hurts, kind of, it's like that's what it felt like.
It's
I'd
a
almost been punched out of my,
it's a very, very real thing. My first time my first time I can remember was when I was 17, and I was reading a book called The Art of Astral Projection. Actually, I was reading the Silmarillion by Tolkien, but I'd read The Art of Astral Projection, and I just it was during the daytime, and I my body felt like it was glued to the bed, and I just I said, "Oh, I can astral project now." I just popped right out up to the ceiling, and I started floating out down the hallway feet first. And I said, "I'm gonna go." I could hear my parents talking, so so I'm gonna go and spy on them and tell them what they were doing because they know I was taking a nap in the back bedroom. And then I got this weird vibrational feeling, like I was, like I was ready to come back down and like look at myself, and I got this vibrational feeling, and then I felt like I was being pulled back through mud. It's like I was being pulled back through
Yeah.
mud. This really weird sensation.
I
And
know
then
that feeling.
I'm back in my body, and I didn't feel like I was quite really completely connected for like about 12 hours. I
Mm.
had to do some work after that, and I felt like this kind of like
like his arm would come out of its body.
semi. I felt semi nauseous and just kind of like this is not quite myself, but it was like
Yeah.
it was just like again, it's like these practices they actually work, but you know what? They work really better if you're not taking medications and you're young and whatever. You're kind of like a little more pure. Yeah, they're a little easier. They're actually a lot easier in my experience. It's like when we get heavily medicated or take a lot of drugs, they become.
And after I was doing the practices for a while, I was enjoying astral projection. That was fun. But I started having clairaudience during the waking state, during I'd be typing away at work, la, la, dum, 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 and then somebody would talk right behind me,
Yep.
and I'd expect to turn and see someone there, and there'd be nobody
Nothing.
there.
Yep.
And I said, this is just creeping me out. So I stopped the practices, and
Yeah.
the abilities slowly faded for me. But because Stephen comes from, he's already psychic to
I
start,
still
you
have
know.
it today.
Yeah, it
Yep.
never stopped for him.
Never
And
stopped.
we recently learned from Luis Elizondo's book that we've known that there's a paranormal psychic connection to the phenomena because of, all the people we interviewed. Most abductees, uh, they're psychics somehow. Like this one's a psychic healer, and that one's a medium, and this one is whatever. But
Yeah, like
there seems to
empathic.
be a psychic connection. And then, sure enough, Luis Elizondo in his new book said that the government did MRI scans of brains of abductees and discovered that they have the exact same kind of brains as people with ESP or remote viewers.
Wow.
So there is this connection that we've known
Yep.
forever, but now it's been
called
proven.
it's called the parahippocampal gyrus, and it's an area that is on both hemispheres of the brain, and it's exaggerated or expanded in people that have the ability to actually remote viewing is something that is basically has to be taught. In fact, Elizondo in his book Imminent talks about that. He spends about 6 pages talking about how he was trained to do remote viewing, and there were a lot of side effects that came with that too. In fact, well,
Definitely.
there are side effects like being visited by orbs. He and his wife, they would have orbs would start visiting their house at night and things like that. And with this, in other words, it's something that you can be taught if you have the right type of brain structure.
Yeah, I think it took me about 4 or 5 months to finally break through with the lucid dreaming. Like, I remember there would be times where I felt like I was getting close, and then I would get really scared of that moment of like actually letting my brain just fully release, and I don't know, having that disconnect
Yeah, like
between
what's
my
gonna
conscious
happen?
and my conscious reality and my, I don't know what else you would call it, like unphysical state. Like it it was very intimidating. I'm glad that I did do it, and I wish I would have continued to study it more and do more about it. But the one experience I had was so freaky that I was like, I don't know if I can really do this, but I've always kept my hidden object just in case I wanted to do it again. And just to make sure I'm still really living. I'll go and
Right.
visit.
Yeah,
True.
exactly. Just imagine if we went to school and they were part of our classes, that you would
Yeah,
like learn
part of
this
our culture growing up,
from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade and then through college, where these were part of was this a part of your
Yeah, it's
curriculum?
just thrown right
Like,
in.
learning a language, you're learning how to do
Yeah.
all these things and control it.
And
You
we think our
also,
cousins do exactly
yeah,
that.
and imagine a society where everybody could read each other's minds. Then you'd have classes in how to keep yourself from having your mind read. It would be like as far as like the idea of like keeping secrets, it would be flipped on its side. Okay,
Right.
because you couldn't keep secrets. You'd have to learn how to keep secrets. So it's like in a completely different mindset. So yes,
Yeah, it's
exactly. It's like,
true.
but it's part of what we have. If we can do it, which we can, it means that we can do it. It's like
Right.
people say, a genius. Oh, well, that's odd. No, a genius. No, everybody could be a genius, but it's just using the right parts of the brain. It's not that, we're that different. We're not that different at all,
Yeah.
really. But it's kind of like, and genius it's like one of the biggest problems with a genius is that they'll say, oh, well, end up going crazy. Well, maybe they're really, they talk about thing about genius and schizophrenia or like hand and foot, right?
Right.
But it's not that. If you are seeing things in a different way and you can't understand why other people aren't seeing the way you're seeing it, you're going to feel really disconnected from your average person, and they're going to think you're weird.
Very much
So it's
so.
like you just look at it from the standpoint that geniuses are really kind of islands in and of themselves,
Mhm.
and they are very lonely people, but they are still
Yeah.
human. They're still human, for God's sake.
Yeah. And we think there's a connection to the whole cryptid phenomenon because the only creatures that walk perfectly upright on this planet is us. Even our closest relative, the chimp, can't really, they can sort of make shift to stand and
Even
walk, but
kangaroos can't.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And so when they're frightened, they run away on all fours and take to the
Ho-
trees, right?
ho-
That's not their natural gait. The only exceptions to that are the aliens and Bigfoot. Everything else doesn't walk perfectly upright.
That's right.
And that it takes millions of years of evolution to become a perfectly upright
A
walking being.
bipedal,
So,
Yeah.
and all of the alien types are bipedal, upright walking hominids, right? And
Mhm.
we think that, like, I think the grays are what would happen to a human being if you put us underground for 13,000 straight years,
or even
right?
more.
Big eyes. Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes sense. Big eyes, so that you
Yep.
could take in more light.
Gray skin, because you don't need melanin anymore to
Fucking
protect you
mind
from the
is blown.
sun. No,
You're
you don't need hair to protect you from the sun
you don't
anymore.
need body fat.
Yeah, you
Because
adapt
the
to your
ground is already
surroundings.
insulated.
You're exactly. You're definitely what you're eating is going to be different.
Mm.
For
Yeah.
one thing, exactly.
And we think the Nordics at some point maybe discovered the grays and have been utilizing them
As a slave
as
race.
like a slave worker race that they
Yeah.
have genetically engineered to be non-emotional. And we're not entirely sure about this, but I mean, this is just our theories that because the grays are always described the same way as completely unemotional
Hmm.
and very goal driven. They never stand around wondering what to do next. They always, they're very efficient with their procedures.
and they use telepathy.
Mm.
Yes, and they communicate via telepathy with their
Now the
abductees.
being that said hi Steve into my ear, that wasn't telepathy. That was actually a voice. Now I'm not sure what all that was about, but
Right.
I'm not sure about that. But I can tell you for a fact it was not in my head. It was in my ear. I knew it bent down to me and actually whispered in my ear. So that was really, I don't know what to say about that.
That's paranormal.
Think about this. Maybe like because he is such like intertwined with your family, maybe that's like a thing that like grays, if you are intertwined with their family link, like maybe they are able to communicate with you. Because did people even say grays have mouths? Like, I don't even know if that's a thing.
Yeah, they have mouths and small noses and giant eyes and
Yeah, in fact,
and underdeveloped ears.
yeah,
you know.
the being that told my uncle to get out of the tent in Ceylon definitely spoke into his ear or basically like this talked to him like face to face, said, Douglas, you have to get out of your cot and you have to leave because you may be killed. And so that being again the same shape and the same size, but 1948 compared to 1979, but it was the same. It was the same being.
So they
Hmm.
can talk, but I think most of
It's
the
like
time
your
they
choice.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's
yeah. I mean, think
situational.
about it. If they're abducting someone who has no connection to them, they might not want to talk to you. They might just want to communicate telepathically because they don't have anything personal to say to you. But if it
Yeah.
becomes more personal, maybe they're willing to, look over that aspect.
I felt when I think about it, really, when that being said, "Hi, Steve," when I was 18 years of age, I felt a feeling of love or like familiarity.
Yeah.
Like I met this being before, or I had met this, whatever. I didn't feel scared, but the only reason why I felt scared was because I couldn't move. And from the standpoint of feeling, and all the other stuff that happened before, with my bed being pushed 3 times and then my arm being tapped on and then the silver bell in the wall and then my dad's doors opening and closing. So all these things that happened before kind of made me feel like I don't know what's going on. But from the standpoint of, I didn't feel like, they're saying like, "Hi, Steve." It was like, "Hi, Steve."
It was very
like,
pleasant.
it was pleasant. It was pleasant.
And I think Bigfoot is I think it's real, first of all, because they've
Yep.
actually isolated the genome. There's an unknown primate living
Yes.
in Northern California.
Mhm.
What else could it be?
This
How
is
many unknown primates do we have?
Yes, this is important. This has been done within the last year.
And
Now
then
we isolated it.
I think they utilize Bigfoots as sentries to guard the entrances to
Oh,
their
like
underground.
watchdogs almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost like that.
And the reason I think that partly is because Shasta is the home of the
Very much
Lemurians,
so,
right?
yeah.
And they're all around Shasta,
Yeah.
and
There-
Mount Adams is another UFO hotspot mountain. We think they
That
hollow
would-
out mountains.
That would also make a lot of sense because we
Right.
always try to explain where do they go? Why do we not find the remains? Like, why does
Right.
it always like just like a footprint here, a footprint
and
there?
why do cameras not work around them? The same reason cameras don't work on
UFOs.
UFOs and aliens
Because they're
when
more
they're not.
advanced beings than we know, and they're being utilized to their potential because they're more adept to doing that type of work.
I think they have like electromagnetic
if you-
dampening fields, but
That too?
maybe it's a mental thing. I don't know.
If you use an analog like a Bolex or something like that, like an older
yeah.
older school camera, you can pick them up.
The Patterson Gimlin film, the famous Bigfoot film, was
Mhm.
shot with a Bolex, and I used to have a Bolex. They're spring operated, so they don't have any electronic parts
they're
at
not-
all.
Yeah, it's all
you know?
analog.
Yeah, all
Exactly.
analog, not digital.
And so I also think this because of Lake Rupkund. Have you ever heard about this weird ass lake up in India? It's on the slopes of Mount Kailash, which is another UFO hotspot, and where we think the lost city of Shangri-La is, the underground city of Shangri-La.
Mm.
Another one of these underground cities that
It's
were
on
sunk.
It's on the border of India and Tibet.
and Tibet, right it's on the slopes of Mount Kailash.
14,000 feet high.
And this lake is full of skeletons. And
Huh.
people thought, well, maybe there was a battle a long time ago and the losers were just all chucked in the lake at the same time. But that's not what they're finding. They started doing DNA testing on all these skeletons, and they're finding they span of about 1,000 years. And they're from all different races of humans.
Mm.
And a lot of them have their heads bashed in, like at the top, like some behemoth took a club and bashed their heads in.
And they're Gaelic. They're from all different places.
All different places all around
all
the
different
world.
races. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
it's
think
like,
what
what's
happened,
that?
I think whenever an exploring party got too close to the entrances to Mount, Shangri-La, the Yeti, which are sentries being used as sentries, bash in their heads and chuck them in the lake.
Yeah, we didn't have the evidence, and we think, oh, this is just a fairy story, but they're actually well over 1,000 skeletons there, and they date from over 1,000-year period and from all different parts of the world. So it's something that you can actually see and feel and touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Real physical evidence.
It's hard to explain why way above the tree line at 14,000 foot elevation would there be all these skeletons from all different races that are just chucked in there with their skulls bashed in.
Yeah, just willy-nilly, like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's there. So
And they didn't bash their own heads in and jump in.
No, I doubt it. No. And I doubt they just
Right.
met up to have a battle themselves together where it's like, all right, everybody get in a circle, like we're doing this.
Then
Yeah.
who threw
Why?
him in? Who was the last guy standing had to throw
it
him
was,
in.
it was battle bots, but
Yeah, literally.
ancient times battle bots.
I'd like to confess right now that I'm a huge BattleBots fan, and I'm really upset that they've stopped having them.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
we like battle bots.
So good.
Somehow destruction has its own attraction to me.
It's one of those like just chef's kiss on certain things.
Mhm.
Yeah, Saw Blaze won.
And I think when our cousins, I think they use genetic manipulation like we would use any tool.
Right.
And I think maybe that's what a lot of these bizarre races are, these cryptid type of races everyone's seeing,
Yeah.
like Dogman and Mothboy and, the
Mhm.
reptiloids and the insectoids,
Yeah.
right?
I've always believed Mothman was an alien. Always.
Mhm.
Right. And so we think let's say they had a bunch of underwater work they wanted done, right? An underwater base or something.
Make an underwater worker.
We
That's
would
right.
We would use scuba gear. We would just put scuba gear on,
Yep.
right? But what I think they've done is they breed the underwater,
Yeah, I mean,
worker
if they're
race.
genetically advanced enough to like do that type of like, like playing God at that point, like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they probably would.
150 years ago, the horse and buggy was the big thing, right? Now the horse and buggy, nobody even knows how to make a horse and buggy anymore, apart from maybe the Amish.
Yeah,
the
except for the
The
Amish.
Amish might know
That's
how to
it.
do it, right? But no, it's like look where we've come in 100 years with the airplane, just even the airplane, okay?
It's so
So,
fast too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just speeding up too.
And I think a lot of it is reverse engineering their tech.
I do too. I
The
really do.
I've
microchip,
believed
you
that for a
know.
long time, especially like how quick the iPhone came about, like touchscreen stuff. Like,
Yeah,
how do we go from a
so
flip phone
fast.
that has a non-colorized screen to 5
High
years later, a
definition fucking
screen that you can touch, that's heat sensitive and all this stuff? Like, how do you
cameras
go
that will biometrically read your face.
yeah,
Yes.
how do
Yeah,
we go from all of this stuff so quickly? You can't tell me that we
oh,
aren't reverse engineering something.
I know we're getting toward the end, but I want to interject this real quick. Steve Jobs is, given credit for a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Releasing the iPhone and all that. But, a lot of people don't realize that Steve Jobs studied a lot of astral projection and Kundalini and Indian practices. He studied with shaman, and he got a lot of his ideas by going into deep meditation and trances. That's how he came up with a lot of his ideas. He
Right.
gives a lot of that credit to the Akashic records, just like Tesla. Tesla
Yep.
came up with alternating current when he was walking through a park and he was daydreaming, and all of a sudden he saw, oh, that's how you do it.
Yep.
We
It's
think
just
Robert
there.
Louis Stevenson came up
Yeah.
with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde after having a dream. It's just like this information is here all the time.
Yep.
And
Just yeah.
I think the Akashic record is maybe being broadcasted by our cousins to try and civilize us.
Yeah,
Uh,
that could be, yeah.
I think they're trying to civilize us, and I know we're not really seeing evidence of it, but think about like when I read Victor Hugo's book. What's the famous one where the gypsy,
Oh, you're talking about
the Hunchback,
Hunchback of Notre
the
Dame.
Hunchback of Notre Dame. This at the time, the people of that time would go down to the square on the weekends. They'd pack a picnic lunch and watch people getting tortured to death, on the pillory or hung. Or this was amusement back then. This was,
Hmm.
except we go to movies now, but this was their movie. Their entertainment was
The stoning of the day.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
bloodthirsty, and now I don't think I could kill my own meat if it wasn't at the grocery store all wrapped nicely for me. So I think they are slowly changing us to be
Hmm.
more civilized. At least I think that's their goal, and I think that they're infiltrating our society on purpose to try and change us from the inside out with the possible goal of reintegrating with us someday,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah,
It's
I
probably all
feel
the subtle changes too.
I've
Yeah.
always kind of thought that too, that like eventually one day aliens will be here and we didn't even realize they never
Exactly.
were not with us because they were always here. And it's just one of these times something's gonna happen to where they have this like complete exposure and it was completely designed and perfected by them because they know they probably have it down to a timeline to where on this day at this time it's going to happen and that's when
Right.
it's going to happen because that's when it's supposed to happen. And you can't tell me that these super intelligent beings don't have this giant concrete plan that they know every minute to every second of when something needs to happen, how it needs to happen. Like
Yeah.
it just makes more sense to me for it to happen that way than completely something random happens. Like all of a sudden aliens are here and it's just like,
Right.
oh, chaos, chaos, chaos. They're going to integrate it so slowly and perfectly that we don't even realize
Yep.
it never
It's a smooth transition.
wasn't there.
I think so
It's like
too.
it's like the frog in the pot experiment. If you throw a frog into a boiling pot, it's going to jump out right away. But you put the frog in the pot and you slowly turn up the temperature, they won't even know what's happening.
Yep.
In this case, though, we're going to be alive instead of the frog being dead.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. The one of the things that the Ariane master spoke to Admiral Byrd about is he said, we tried to contact you people, but you shot at us. And it reminded me of the LA incident
Battle of
in
Los
19
Angeles,
yeah,
1942.
where Pearl Harbor had just happened, and so our West Coast especially was on hyper alert because we thought the
Thousands of
Japanese might
rounds.
attack us, right? So this UFO appears over LA, and
"Hi,
we
friends."
threw everything at it, like 1,000 mortars, and we just
Actually,
lit up the whole sky.
1,500 mortars, yes.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say
then-
it was a lot of ammunition.
And it's like people ask why they don't just land on the lawn of the White House or something like that. It's like, I think we
Exhibit
tried.
A.
They
Exhibit
tried.
B.
We tried to kill them. That's
Hey,
why we
we-
won't do it that way.
We tried to talk to you guys, but you were shooting at us.
We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended
Yeah.
warranty, but you keep hanging
Yeah.
up.
And
Yeah,
a lot of people ask, like, well,
we're
why
not
don't
the IRS.
why don't they do this? Why don't they do this or why don't they do that? And we can't really speak to why they don't do things. We didn't get the memo, right? But we do know what they are doing, and that's how we developed our theory, was
Exactly.
tracking what they're doing.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
Yeah. And so there it is in a nutshell. You have the theory.
Yeah, without the nut.
Without the nut.
Maybe a couple of nuts or
No, there's no nuts here.
We got a whole basket then.
Well,
So you see what I mean? It's kind of a nuts and bolts theory. It's they're not spiritual beings. No, they're
Hmm.
physical beings like us. That's why they're having sex with us and making children.
It's more evolved.
Yeah.
I do
And
think this is a good point to kind of lead off on tonight. I want to thank you guys for joining us and having this amazing conversation. It definitely opened my eyes to a lot of
We're gonna have to continue this.
theories, and we will continue it by returning
Thank
the
you.
favor and coming onto your show.
Oh, that'd be so great. Thank you.
We would love that.
So we
I'll
will
I'll
100
write to you back and forth, and we'll settle on time and whatnot.
Yes, 100% we will.
Awesome.
I want to give you a chance to plug your book and all of your platforms really quick before we
Oh, yeah.
head off, of course.
Yeah, all the new stuff.
This is the book, Who They Are and What They're Up To.
By Stephen and Leslie Shaw.
Yep. And the documentary that we're just so thrilled with, it's called Who They Are. And just type that into YouTube, and it's the first or third thing to come up still. And
Heck yeah.
and it was by Sky Island Storytelling and Jay Horton Films. Jay Horton was the executive producer, and Jeremy Norrie as the director and producer.
Yeah, he's the guy that I saw that had the was going to Arizona and had the shoulder problem.
Yeah, that guy.
Yep.
And then we have we're on Instagram at leslie.shaw.author, and Leslie's the Leslie spelling. And we're on Facebook as well at the same handle. But if you people out there want to talk to us or relate an experience, we'd be thrilled to hear it. And just go ahead and DM us on Instagram.
Heck yeah.
Yes. And I have
And the new
all-
show. Oh yes, the new show. And then
Yes.
it's called Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. And it's going to be on the Gnostic TV network, which is actually a streaming service now. At one time it was on TV, but now people can find it online, and it'll be launching in a couple of weeks.
Heck
Yeah,
yeah.
and I just pinned the documentary in the comments. So if you
Wonderful.
want
Thank
to
you.
jump from that to go watch their documentary, it's right there for you.
Cool. All right.
Also, if you'd like to purchase their book, I put the link for the book down in the description.
Thanks. It's on Amazon and Ingram for bookstores.
yeah,
Prefer Ingram,
Amazon.
I guess.
Yeah, mostly Amazon.
But yeah, most people just go Amazon's the easiest.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. It
Thanks
was
for
great.
having us. Yeah,
Thank
one of
you
our
guys.
best
You were very
conversations, I'd say.
Yes.
Oh, my heart.
And
Yeah.
with that being said, we want to remind you, keep your ears and eyes open for what really goes.
Bump in the night.
Peace.
Thank you guys. I love you. I love you, fam.
Bye.